What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Football Friday edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, we're powered by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. Fresh roasted coffee. Don't forget, you can download all of our past shows, Buzzsprout, iHeart, Amazon, Spotify, wherever you basically get your pods as well. Rich Quinones is here, our good friend, our NFL insider, Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. You hear him on BYP as well as The Drive during the week, as we are now part of Critical Sports Network. So a very busy off season, and we wanted to illustrate. I know last week when we spoke, we were kind of going around the league. A lot has happened since then. We want to illustrate and highlight what's going on with a focus on the NFC East, and obviously we'll sprinkle in a little bit of the gambling element. I think there were some moves that, look, we'll get to the Giants in a moment with the acquisitions of Winston and Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, quarterbacks. It bumps up their win total from 3.5 to about 4.5, 5. But let's start defending. Yeah, I said it. The defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles and Lloyd. Look, they lost some key players, and I think first we got to document, the players that have gone on to greener pastures, if you will. Josh Sweat, Arizona. Milton Williams had a big Super Bowl with the Patriots now. Darius Slay released Pittsburgh. Kenneth Gainwell, James Bradbury, Mekhi Becton, right? Isaiah Rodgers. So we're seeing right there they lost some key talent on the defensive side. I'll get to some of the returning players and some of the additions, but talk a little bit about the losses of Sweat, Williams, Slade, a veteran, Bradbury, a veteran, Becton as well. So I think, they're going to have to make up for those losses, especially Williams, Sweat, and Slay.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I cautioned all my emailers and Eagles fans. I'm in Eagles territory. They're talking, repeat right away, and everything changes as soon as you win. And the NFL is
Sure.
so fluid. I mean, it's early March. They turn the calendar to the next season, and already you talk about the defections on this roster, and it's going to be really interesting to see how the Eagles replace them, particularly Howie Roseman. Darius Slay goes to the Steelers. We'll see if he has enough left in the tank. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, obviously something was amiss there in terms of sending him to Houston and getting back Kenyon Green.
Yep. Good point.
But the return wasn't the best there. Josh Sweat, they just could not afford him. He had that big Super Bowl, and you knew he was going to get paid because pass rusher is such a premium amount. The Cardinals gave him that money, and it's just interesting, Q, because we've seen this so many times with the Eagles in the past. Clyde Simmons and Seth Joyner and all those guys in the past. They went from Philly out to Arizona, so we'll see how it works out for Sweat. And the Eagles have signed a lot of guys on 1 year type deals. Roseman's bringing in, but I think they're going to do more in the draft, and that's where they may look at defensive line.
Listen, they re-signed Lane Johnson. They gave Saquon a boatload of money, Zach Bond as well. They brought in Aguilera, a good linebacker from the Giants, but off injured. Aver Williams on offense, kick returner. Dory Jackson, a veteran, cornerback, a bunch of tight ends. But you're right. I think anytime you lose talent and you have to make up for it, that basically now puts more pressure on a franchise to rely on younger players, right? So if you're looking at the Eagles right now, defensively, you're going to rely on Sidney Brown, Nolan Smith. You got to help key veterans on that side of the ball. On offense, I think, you got the majority of the players intact, and that's what they want. That unit should be able to put up some points, as we saw um, last season. So I wouldn't really panic if I was an Eagles fan. Now, the team on the rise are the Washington Commanders. And again, look, they know they got a franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels. So what do? They go out and they do what? They turn around, they get Debo Samuel, they get Laremy Tunsil. They also add some elements on the defensive side of the ball because, again, they gave up a lot of points. They gave up some big plays. We'll talk about the departures right now. I thought maybe two or three of the biggest ones, and then I'll get your thoughts on this. Jonathan Allen goes to Minnesota. Dante Fowler Jr. goes to the rival Dallas Cowboys. And St. Juice goes to the Chargers. Good player. Jeremy Chin goes to the Raiders. If any other player, too, stands out, let me know. But again, they had some departures. They got some vets coming back. And then they obviously make the key acquisitions on the offensive side of the ball with Tunsil and Debo Samuel.
It was going to be interesting because they kind of popped up on radar kind of quickly for a lot of people
Yeah.
in terms of last season. And now a lot of people are going to say, okay, you're not sneaking up on us this season. And Jaden Daniels is obviously big talent. We'll see if they're able to, you know, help him in terms of that offensive line. That's why they brought Tunsil in. He was still a lot of times running around trying to make plays on his own, and he'll get some more protection there. I think a big thing, obviously, is they're bringing over Debo Samuel to kind of partner him with McLaurin, and that's going to be, I think, a good thing for them. Um, and it's just they're a good young team. And now they have some more pieces because we said the offensive line was kind of average last year. Defensively, yes, Allen's going to be a loss, and they're going to have to figure out a way to stop the Eagles because the Eagles are the target, But exciting off season for the Washington Commanders, and I think their fans are excited.
They should be. They're fresh off their first NFC title game since, what, in over 30 something odd years. Um, they believe they can be that new rival to the Philadelphia Eagles. They can contend with the Eagles in the NFC East, let alone the NFC. They got to, again, just clean up on the defensive side of the ball. You got a franchise quarterback, so you're kind of going all in, right, with that window of opportunity as it stands. And the NFC East is not a very good division. We'll save my Giants for last. And then, look, the team that always seems to win in July and August, the Dallas Cowboys. And listen, now there's a report coming out that the Cleveland Browns might be interested in trying to trade for Dak Prescott. They added a bunch of defensive players because their defense is really bad. They lost Zach Martin. He retires. DeMarcus Lawrence goes to Seattle. Jordan Lewis goes to the Jags. I think Cooper Rush, one of their backups, Baltimore. Golston goes to the New York Giants. So you're talking about a team that's getting older, a disappointing campaign, coming off an injury-riddled campaign, and again, going in obviously a different direction with their head coach. I just I don't feel as though they have a path, right? They have a clear-cut path and a way of doing business. And in the past, they were able to spend, make the trade, the acquisition, and it's like, okay, now you're just hoping this team is healthy and they can maybe just string together a 17 game season. But they don't, to me right now, I actually pick them and the Giants. I think they're your bottom 3, 4 teams in the NFC East.
You'd have to say the Dallas Cowboys. Once again, they're having a quiet um, free agency period, and I think a big thing of it is Jerry Jones is paying for past success to a lot of these big offensive stars. You talk about Dak Prescott, CD Lamb, a lot of money tied up in them, and a couple of other guys on defense. They still got to figure out a way to pay Micah Parsons coming up as well. So a lot of that's fluid with this team, but um, I have to agree with you in terms of their roster. Their roster is lacking. And a big problem it is, and we talked about it over and over again, Jerry Jones is the general manager of this team. Maybe he needs to kind of acquiesce and kind of move back. But uh, hiring Brian Schottenheimer, you know, that did not excite anybody. And you were like, okay, what's he really bringing to the table? I know he has a Schottenheimer name, and he's been around a couple of staffs, Shanahan staffs in the past, but this team is kind of rudderless, and we're just going to see how they go. But they're firmly in a rearview mirror of Washington and the Eagles.
Yeah, and let me clarify too. Just because there's these rumors coming out, the likelihood of the Dallas Cowboys trading Dak Prescott is beyond remote, right? I
The
mean,
contract is humongous.
there you go. There you go. Right. I mean, we could have had this conversation prior to the Dallas Cowboys converting close to what, 46 million of his 2025 salary into a bonus. And then you avoid another 36 million in 2025 for the cap charges. So even without that restructuring, it would have been a remote possibility. But even just a buzz or a notion of that. Look, simply put, I think his time is coming to an end with the Dallas Cowboys. And from the position he was drafted, he's had a really good career, never able to lead them and take them over the hump. He's dealt with some really bad injuries. He's getting older. Look, their one big move was bringing back, what was it last year? They brought back Ezekiel Elliott. So it's like, they sign these running back. I'm sorry, they sign these wide receivers. They're losing linemen. That's an injury depleted group and roster. And then we talked about the head coach. It's not going to blow you away. And there you have the Dallas Cowboys. And then lastly, as painful as it may be, and I did get your text the other day with the eyeballs. Not only do they bring in the New York Football Giants crab legs and Jameis Winston, but also letting him cook Russell Wilson. I don't know if I text my buddy after this. I said, you know what? Low risk, low reward. They're still probably going to draft a quarterback. They might even trade that pick. Now there's some mock draft saying that they're going to trade the pick to the Saints. And then all of a sudden, the Eagles will turn around and trade their late round pick to the Giants. And maybe the Giants have an opportunity at Dart, Jackson Dart. I don't know. All I know is this: they have zero plan whatsoever. They have zero plan. And Winston is a stopgap. Jameis Winston is a stopgap. Russell Wilson is a stopgap. I mean, at least with Jameis Winston, he'll throw the ball a little bit. Russell Wilson might throw the ball a little bit. It's more than the other quarterbacks have been doing for the Giants the last several years. I just feel like this is a rudderless ship right now. And maybe they panicked because they were really trying to entertain the thought of Aaron Rodgers under center and squeezing a little bit out of blood from that stone for one more season. And then they had to go to plan B and C, and that's Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson.
I was smiling because obviously in the past, Russ is cooked. He's done. He can't play. And then
Everything
your
I've
team
said,
signs him. So we'll see what he has left. He did have good numbers, but obviously down the stretch, did not play very well for the Steelers, looking his age. And you're right, stopgap guys in Winston and Wilson, and they're just trying to, you know, tie together a plan there. And they bring back Dayball, they bring back Joe Shane, but their jobs are very tenuous here, and I do expect them to probably sit where they are at number 3 and try to get Shador Sanders. We'll see if that works
hmm,
out or if they go another direction. But you got to wonder if this coaching staff is going to be around to see a young quarterback mature. But as you're saying, Q, a lot of holes on this roster. I do like, obviously Neighbors and some other pieces there, but not many.
I do like the fact that they put a lot into the secondary, right? They went ahead and they paid a Debo, or however you pronounce it, a Debo, a lot of money. Cornerback solidify that position. They brought back a veteran in Darius Slayton. They added some linebacker hope and help in Chris Board. I think defensive tackle, defensive lineman, Robertson Harris as well. And again, you know, you lose Ojulari, who's never been healthy, Pinnock, who's been inconsistent, Daniel Jones, we know that didn't pan out, Adoree Jackson didn't pan out, Patrick Johnson didn't pan out. So it's not like, look, we know they're so far away from contending. They might be the worst team in the NFC, let alone the NFC East. But the reason always goes back to that position that's under the microscope. And the big reason is their lack of clarity at the quarterback position. And it just didn't work out with Daniel Jones. And again, that's why I think a lot of people, do you draft Sanders knowing you have two viable options in veterans in Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson? Or do you just see if you can just again, squeeze a quarter out of a dime with these guys and see if you can win a couple games? And if that's the case, and if you're looking at the draft class next April, then the last thing you want is for these guys to go out and win you a couple games and be competitive. So it's like, they're stuck. They're that eighth seed in the NBA. You're not going to beat the one seed. You might, eventually win some games, but come playoff time, you're stuck in a precarious position. It's like it's almost as though you're in purgatory. And you're right. If they were going to go the veteran stopgap route, then I would have just basically said, if that's the case, if that's the plan, then you might as well get rid of the GM and the head coach and start from scratch and let two new guys come in, two new faces, and then if you decide to draft Sanders, you draft them. So I think we'll see if we can punch up Lloyd in a second. I think we had a problem. There he is. There you are, my friend. All right. So I was waxing poetic and rambling on. So go ahead. My last comment, my last thought. I think I just captivated you with my insight. My last thought was, if 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 that was the case, if you struck out with these vets, or if you're thinking, hey, we'll be competitive, then why not just basically turn around and draft a quarterback struggle again, or bring in another head coach and a new GM? And then really totally rebuild. And they're still not doing that. They're trying to plug a hole here.
Yeah, they're trying to save their jobs, and it's going to be interesting to see if how John Mayer, who owns the team and runs it, how he handles this situation, and if he's going to have the patience, to bring have for Daybold and Shane to kind of survive what you're talking about. Because right now they're looking at another season. Last year, what 3 and 14, something like
14.
that. And maybe they go upwards to five now, you know. Um, but they have to rebuild. This should be more of a tear down situation. And if they go with a young quarterback and bring him in there, it's going to take time. But and Russ could win you a couple games here and there, and that defense does have some playmakers in terms of they could probably get some turnovers, and the special teams aren't bad. So um, yeah, it's kind of that no man's land that you're talking about. But maybe should if they do take short standard, maybe he's the guy that they could build around. I'm not sure. Another guy I was talking to was like, well, why don't they just think and try to get into Arch Manning and sweepstakes next season? So we're gonna have to see how this plays out. But yeah, this roster it's just kind of devoid of talent, and as you said, they're expected to be in that bottom portion of the NFC East.
Listen, these are low risk, potentially high reward, right? So you're giving Russell Wilson a 1 year deal, 21 million, 10.5 million guaranteed. He's not the same quarterback he once was. We all know that, right? I mean, it's just, you know, if for some reason Tennessee doesn't get a pick in and all of a sudden Cam Ward's not there, then you would love to grab him at three. But even if Cam Ward goes one, Sanders goes two, maybe you still got Hunter there at three. I don't know. But point being is, I never thought they should go after Aaron Rodgers. And, as much as I kill and criticize Russell Wilson saying he's cooked, well, I feel as though with Aaron Rodgers, it's all about Aaron Rodgers and it's on Aaron Rodgers' time. And you can't run a franchise like that. So it's leaving these teams almost like twisting in the wind. So now you block off these teams that have grab quarterbacks, and the last team standing without any quarterbacks under contract are the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if I'm the Steelers, I would be very hesitant to even broach Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers to me has 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out. Like I believe Aaron Rodgers threw his last pass last season for the Jets. I was shocked he even came back after the Achilles, 4 offensive snaps in 2 seasons ago to open up the season against Buffalo. And I feel he's done. And I don't know why you're trying to pry a guy out that's halfway out the door or pry a guy in who's halfway out the door.
Yeah. Julian and I talked about this in terms of which teams were looking at him. And the Vikings decided they said, look, that was his number one landing spot. He wanted to go there, but JJ McCarthy's their guy. He's ahead of schedule in terms of his ACL. And there's just not a lot of landing spots left. And the Giants, you're right. The Giants were like, what's the difference between bringing him in and at his age and going with the Russell Wilson type and Winston? So there's not a lot of options out there for Aaron Rodgers. And he was trying to dictate kind of where he was going to go, and teams just aren't having that in terms of his past performance and where he is at 41 years of age. The Steelers could be a likely landing spot, but I just don't know if that's a good fit. And he's kind of dragging his feet here, and after a while, they may move in another direction as well. So uh, I do kind of agree with you that maybe, yeah, he's going to retire, and that's kind of where I was kind of leaning at the end of the season. I just thought he looked so bad, looked disinterested at the end for the Jets. Why not just walk away instead of going to another place and kind of looking like Johnny Unitas playing for the Chargers?
Right. Right. In 72, where he was sitting in the locker room and he thought guys were smoking a cig and they were passing around a joint. He was like, yeah, this isn't for me. As we close it out on a Friday edition of Back Your Play with Q, Rich Quinones here, Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. We're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Check the show notes, 20% off BYP20. We'll put this up on Buzzsprout, Spotify, and Amazon Music. I mentioned, listen, it's March 28th. We're not even through the offseason. We haven't even had the draft yet. Schedule's not out, but here we go. You look at the win totals right now. Eagles 14-3, 6-1 Super Bowl winner in 2024. Their win total is 11 and a half. I'm going to ask you right now on March 28th, will they go over or under? They won 11 plus wins in 3 straight seasons, their longest such stretch since a 5 season run from 2000 to 2004.
Despite losing, Kellen Moore, we got to put that in there as well. That was a huge loss for them, and we're going to see how this offense is going forward for the Eagles. But I think despite that, I think yeah, they can get to 12 wins. I definitely would take it over there. They're just such a consistent team. And as you said, the base of their team is very young. You know, the Quinyon Mitchells of the world and Cooper Jeans and obviously their main guy, Jalen Hurts, he's not that old. And Saquon Barkley still got some gas left in the tank.
Washington Commanders, the team that no one except myself picked to make a run at the NFC East and make a run into the playoffs. They won 10 games. A lot of books are projecting 8.5. I'm sorry, their 2024 record, they won 12 games. A lot of books are projecting, you know, 10.5 wins. Are they going to go under or over? And just to let you know, their last winning season before last year was 2015.
The number's eight.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, I think they're going to go. I definitely think they can get to 10 wins. Dane Daniels is such a dynamic player, and they're starting to put some pieces around him. And we talked about them fixing the offensive line and that defense kind of retooling. So I think they can beat that number, but it, it they're going to make the playoffs. I still think they're a wild card type team. So I
Everyone's
actually thought they were going to be a wild card last year. So I don't mean to
Everyone's
toot my own
yeah,
horn.
everyone's jumping on my Commanders. All right, the Dallas Cowboys 7-10, 50-1 long shot as a Super Bowl winner. They've gone over their win total in three straight seasons, 12-5 each season before last season 7-10 in 2024. With that being said, their win total is projected to be 8.5. I'm hammering the under. I think they're a 6-7 win team.
I agree with you. I think the ship is just kind of rudderless as we talked about. Jerry Jones, he's got to cede control of this team and let somebody else run football operations. I just don't think they'll get to that number, and you're going to see the continued tear down of this team. They're going to kind of have to, um, change everything on the fly.
And then lastly, my New York Football Giants, they stink. 3-14. Their odds were 200-1. Again, projections right around 5-6. Books have them at 5.5. I will tell you this is their eighth straight season with a win total under 500, which it's just, my God. I mean, for those that used to rip those teams that were winning and those Super Bowl teams and Eli, you would just absolutely just kill to have that competitive spirit and that winning games and seasons right now. I look at this team even with Russell Wilson and some of the acquisitions. I think they're going to be another 2-9, 2-10, and then if they drafted Sanders, they're going to stick him in there. I'm looking at 3-4 wins again.
That's a tough one. I said five earlier, and you figure they're going to win a couple more games, but I don't know if you get over that number, Q. I think it's another tough season for the Giants, and I do agree with you that it's going to be under. It may be closer than we think, though.
It's absolutely it's depressing. St. John's gets bounced in the tournament. Yanks got opening day fine. Giants stink. Knicks, we don't know what's going to happen come playoff time. It's very frustrating, my friend. And I usually reserve my frustration for September, October, but we're already in March and I'm already annoyed. I'm already telling you this team's going to win 3 games. So you might as well back your play with that. Don't forget, give Lloyd a follow on social media on X as well, at Lloyd Vance. Next week, we're going to keep going around the league. We're going to start to dive into every division and all these acquisitions, these departures, the win totals, and then the draft's right around the corner. We'll do our mock draft as well. But I always appreciate you jumping on board for a couple moments, my friend.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.